when you're planning your day, being aware of these different times of day where you're going to be up and down and so forth, you really want to maximize the time that you could get that absorption feeling where you're totally focused in the flow. I get asked a lot, like, how can I get in the flow, right? I had a great match last week and I was in, if I want to be there again. Well, part of that is being able to be zeroed and dialed in the moment and allow yourself just the process of whatever it is you're doing.
Welcome to Charge Forward Coaching, the podcast for committed athletes and individuals who want to achieve more on and off the field. Hosted by James Blasco, certified mental toughness and resilience coach. You'll gain insights and inspiration from elite athletes, coaches, and others who know what it takes to excel. Are you ready to go to the next level? Then tune in, get inspired, and let's charge forward. Now here's your host, James Blasco.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Charge Forward Coaching Podcast. I'm James Blasco. Thanks for joining. And today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that is time. Now, what I'm going to do, similar to previous episodes, I'm going to split this up into 2 episodes, and we're going to today focus on time as it pertains to the 24 hours you have today, right? Or tomorrow. And then in the next episode, we're going to broaden our view of time and we're going to look at things like beginning, midpoints, and ends. And there's 2 books I'm going to reference throughout where a lot of this information came from, and I highly recommend reading them, and we'll get to those in a second. So you might be wondering, well, James, what does time have to do with the 4 C's of mental toughness that you're always talking about? Well, actually, there's 2 specific areas, 2 factors within the 4 C's that really stand out to me when we talk about time. And those are goal orientation and life control. And I'll explain the connection in a second. But let's first talk about time. You know, time's funny. It's one of those things that we all have, right? In theory, it's the same 24 hours that we have on our watch or on our phone or the clock that everybody shares. And whether you're old or young, rich or poor, doesn't matter what country you're in, all of us have 24 hours in a day to accomplish whatever it is we're trying to accomplish. But hold that thought for a second. Time actually isn't the same for everybody. Our perception of time is way different. Mine is way different than yours at any given moment. So what does that mean? Well, there's a big point in this. Time that you have every single day can be quickened, hurried up, or it could actually slow down and you could get more done, more accomplished. And you wonder, how is that possible, right? There's no time travel. Well, Albert Einstein thinks a little bit differently, as you know, right? And he thinks, when we talk about time, if you look at it in a linear way, right, just in the hours of the day that go by, it's all the same, that's not true. And actually, not just his work, but recent studies, neuroscience, all of that is proving that time is nonlinear. So what that means is you have a lot more control over how time works for you in a given day than you think. Let's talk about 3 important things about your day and you that you need to know. Before we get into 3, let me explain where you might fall in 3 different categories of people in terms of how your day kind of starts and ends. And what I mean by that is really like our sleeping patterns. So in the book, here's one of the books I talked about. It's called When: The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing by Daniel Pink. There it is right there. Highly recommend you look at it. Great book. But he brings up the 3 different types of individuals. There's Larks, those who get up early in the morning, like me, super early in the morning. That's about 14%. Then there's the third birds. Those are the folks that make up the bulk of these 3 groups, and they're about 65%. And they wake up a little bit later in the morning, maybe around 8 o'clock or something like that. And then there's the owls. Their midpoint of sleep is like 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. So they're sleeping much later, and that's about 21% of the population. But in a second here, you'll understand why it's important to know if you're a lark or a third bird or an owl, because you're going to want to structure your day around the information I'm about to share. Try to structure your day if you can. So when looking at your day, there's been a lot of studies done. They did a study, it was on Twitter, which is now X, this is a few years ago, they looked at 500 million tweets from about 2.5 million people or so. And what they found from an emotional standpoint is that in the early morning hours up until around noon, a lot of the tweets, the majority, were somewhat positive. They certainly weren't negative. And so the feeling was like a good feeling. Then after lunch, like around 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock, they saw it go down pretty big. And the emotions turned. They were a little bit more negative. And there were the kind of things we sometimes expect from X or Twitter, where it wasn't a bunch of good stuff on there. It was really negative. But then after dinner, early evening, all of a sudden it went up again. The moods of people changed and it was a little bit more positive, a little bit more constructive. So they've done tons of studies on this, but basically they found that for everybody on planet Earth, you have a peak part of the day, which tends to be the morning. You have a trough, which tends to be mid-afternoon, maybe late afternoon. And then you have a rebound that comes in the early evening hours and could last through the rest of your evening. What's important to remember, though, are you a lark? Are you a third bird? Are you an owl? Because that sequence is going to be different, right, in terms of the times that that's happening. But those things are going to happen. So you have to be aware of them. And the reason you need to be aware is because our cognitive abilities change drastically throughout the day for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're the smartest guy in the room, or you're running a company or you're working for the company. It doesn't matter. Your abilities will change, and your performance can be impacted up to like 20%, right? So you have to be very careful when you do certain things. So for example, if you're a lark like me, a lot of your big decisions, analytical decision-making, things like that, I want to do early in the morning between like 8 and 10. That's a good sweet spot for me. Do not put anything challenging or difficult in front of me around 3:30 to 4:30. You're not going to get the best out of me. I may have to make decisions. Life is out of our control sometimes, right? In terms of schedules, things that are put on our plate, we have to do it. But I'm aware of that. I know that. And I do my very best to work around that and maybe take some more time when I'm making decisions, look at more information, because I know my mind's not working the same. So it's really important that we understand that. Once you know if you're a lark or a third bird or an owl, and you understand the consequences of the time during the day, now you can begin to put your day together. And again, you don't always have control over the entire day, but when you're looking at your training or schoolwork or big decisions you have to make, you now at least have the framework of how to kind of sort your day out. Now, we talk about goals a lot and the importance of goals. And this is where goal orientation comes in, because you have to be able to define your goals very specifically and make sure that those goals are in alignment with what you're doing every single day to achieve those goals. And in a book, this is a great book too, by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. He has some awesome books. 10 times is easier than 2 times. He talks a lot about the ability to condense time, right? To save time. And you're like, how could you do that? So one of the ways that you could do that, really the only way, is to have absolute focus, to be completely absorbed in what you're doing. So we've all been there. So if you're wondering what I'm talking about here, let's say you're on a trip. You're out to the Grand Canyon and you step out and you see the Grand Canyon, maybe for the first time, and it's just amazing. It's beautiful. There's so much to take in. It's so powerful, such a moving moment. What happens to do you know what time it is? Do you know how long you've been standing there? Oftentimes not. You're completely absorbed in the view, what you're taking in at that given moment, right? On the flip side, when you're at work, or you're doing things maybe you're not completely thrilled to be doing, whatever it might be, even sometimes at practice, what you're doing is busy work. And busy work makes time go like really fast. And that's something you may not want to happen, right? So when you're planning your day, being aware of these different times of day where you're going to be up and down and so forth, you really want to maximize the time that you could get that absorption feeling where you're totally focused, in the flow. I get asked a lot, like, how can I get in the flow, right? I had a great match last week and I was in, if I want to be there again. Well, part of that is being able to be zeroed and dialed in the moment and allow yourself just the process of whatever it is you're doing, right? So that's like super, super important to know that, but you got to start with your goals and what they are. When you set up your days, then put those things that are important, most important to you. Let's say if you're a lark or even a third bird, in the morning up until noon. Take your breaks. Schedule about at least three breaks a day. That mid-afternoon part might be a great time to take your break. And there's all kinds of breaks. You could take a nap. You can go for a walk. You could maybe play a video game, whatever it is that kind of relaxes you. And then you could come back when you know that your cognitive abilities, that your physical abilities are going to be in a better place. And you could do that second round of training. You could do your homework. You could do all the things that are important that you want to accomplish during the day to work towards those bigger goals that you're working on. Okay. So when you set up your days, there's really kind of 3 days when you look at your calendar, you want to set up. You want to have your performance days, right? Those are days where you're working out, you're training, you're doing the things that get your body and mind prepared for what you're trying to accomplish. Then you want to have your practice days. Those are big. Again, when we talk about flow, it's not just being in the moment. You've practiced so much. You have so much muscle memory. You know what's going to happen. You've prepared for distractions, all those types of things that we talk about, and you're totally set to go. So you're going to have those practice days, but then guess what? You need days to rejuvenate, to rest your body, rest your mind, take a step back and away from, your goals even for a moment. Spend time with family or friends, relax. And believe it or not, you need more of those days than you think. Because again, going back to Dr. Benjamin Hardy, when he's talking about that time sequence, it's not how much you put into your day. It's not quantity. He talks a lot about quality. And if you're doing a lot in a day, you're being busy and that time's moving faster, you're actually slowing down your progress to get to your goal. What you need to do is set up a schedule that fits within the time of day, right? Making sure everything works, and focus only on the things that are going to help you get to your goal. He calls that 10 timesing. If you're just busy, you're 2 timesing, you're not going to get to where you want to be. And even if you do, it's going to take a hell of a lot longer to get there. You want to set up your day where you're focused on the least amount of things you could actually be focused on. I know it's the opposite of what we hear from school and work and everybody else, but that kind of thinking is, quite honestly, in some ways outdated. Science proving that. What you want to do is you want to zero in on the most important things that help you get to your goal that day. That's what you work on. That's what you get absorbed into. You take your breaks, right? You be careful of that midday trough. Don't do anything critical there if you could avoid it. And then you can pick it up in the evening and then get your rest at night. Those steps are critical. If you're serious about your goal, about what you're trying to accomplish, when it comes to time, and again, we're just talking like within a 24-hour period here, these are things that you have to be aware of, you have to take advantage of, and you have to prepare for. If you don't do that, you're kind of 2 times, like Dr. Benjamin Hardy says, probably through life and what you're trying to do. You want to 10 times, you want to slow time down. And with that, you'll actually get to your goal a lot faster. So I hope you got some things out of today's talk. The next episode, we're going to bring the lens out a little bit, look at a bigger perspective of beginnings, midpoints, and ends. And that comes from Daniel Pink's book, When. It's fantastic. It's really useful information. Those are 3 very important parts of any process that you're going to be involved in life. And then don't forget to like and share and subscribe and all those things. But most importantly, keep charging forward.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Charge Forward Coaching. Remember, the journey to greatness is built on mental toughness and consistent effort. So head on over to chargeforwardcoaching.com and book a free discovery call to take the next step in your journey. Until next time, stay focused, stay determined, and keep charging forward.